Hi, everybody. Welcome. So amazing to see all of your faces in this sold out event. So much demand, we had to close tickets 2 weeks ago, which just goes to show just how much our community really cares about the future of healthcare technology and a desire to meet each other. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Ben Wei. I am one of the founders of Harvard in Tech. We are the official alumni organization for technology for Harvard University, covering all schools. And we were founded 9 years ago. And since then, we've produced hundreds of events. And our goal really is to highlight the work of our alums, to bring them together, to talk about cutting edge technology, to work with each other, to push innovation forward, to bring great people together, and to feature amazing talent to share their knowledge so that we can move the world forward. A couple weeks ago, Dr. Martin Gershon here reached out. He's an alum, and he said, "Hey, Ben, I'm very passionate about healthcare technology. There's so many amazing things going on at this intersection that have accelerated and continue to accelerate. I'd love to volunteer and put something together." And from that call, I think it maybe 4 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, he hit the ground running, and we put this together so that we can, what I think is a star-studded panel of really the leading thinkers in this space. So tonight you'll hear from our panelists and our keynote speaker about their thoughts about where the space is and about the intersection of healthcare and technology and how the two are coming together at this moment to do something really special. We are so thankful to Capgemini as our sponsors for the space, and they will say a few words after our keynote. And finally, on behalf of Harvard Tech, we welcome you. We're a volunteer organization, so if you enjoy bringing people together, enjoy discussing topics like this, please reach out. We do more than, we do not just healthcare tech, but across the technology space, from Web3 to fintech, 3D printing, and more. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Martin Gershon.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm super excited about the topic. It's a passion of mine for most of my life. One of my close friends and business colleagues, Tim Oppler, runs a fantastic organization, Terea Partners. And he's going to talk to you about what he sees as the future of healthcare and what he's experienced over these many decades. He couldn't be with us live today, unfortunately, but he is going to stream in, and he's going to impress you, I think, by his vision, because he is a big thinker. So I'd like to put Tim Oppler on the screen and plug him in. He is on the West Coast at the moment. Tim, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. We have an incredible audience here. I think you might be on mute.
I was just saying, great to see you, Martin, and great to see everybody in the audience. Thank you for your time.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Well, you have a very captive audience here, and without really further ado, I'm going to let you talk about some of the amazing things that you have done personally, that Terea is doing, and also that Emerald Bio is doing. So please feel free to give us your vision of what healthcare is going to look like in the next few years.
Martin, thank you very much. And maybe just to start with some quick background, I have a PhD in economics. I became an academic. So basically, I'm an economist, if you will. To me, everything is numbers and finance. Through a series of fluke events that I won't bore you with, I ended up becoming a healthcare investment banker at Credit Suisse, where I worked on, many hundreds of billions of dollars of transactions in the early 2000s. I eventually started my own boutique called Terea. I wanted to have more freedom, and one of the things I've been doing a lot is doing investment activities. And you'll hear soon about one of the companies that some folks on my team have started called Basque Health. To me, what I love about the healthcare sector is the opportunity to really engage the imagination. There's no doubt, if any of you have been to the doctor lately, that there is room for improvement in the system. And so what I'm going to do today is talk about the industry, both from the perspective of the overall healthcare system, but specifically about the industry that I spend time with. In fact, I was just with McKinsey and a major venture investor today on the West Coast talking about the future of the healthcare system. And I'm going to review some slides that are the same that I shared with them. So I should mention that Martin will distribute the slides to all of you so you don't have to take mad notes or anything like that. And I will pause a couple times during my talk and ask if you have questions or what have you. And I know it's a little tough in this kind of setting to do that in a normal way. So if you can put your questions in chat, maybe someone can read them off to me and I'm happy to address those. So without any further ado, let me get my slides up on this screen. And Martin, I do not have a share button on my Microsoft Teams.
We will get that to you immediately.
Okay. Oh, now I can share. Bingo. Wow, that was very efficient. So the title of my talk is meant to be provocative. How does one build a $1 trillion healthcare company? And what I'm going to point out today is that there are 4 tech companies that have a market cap of over $1 trillion. Although I know last few days those market caps have been, falling a little bit, but there isn't a healthcare company that's close. But the healthcare sector is bigger. So why is that? So let's just dive right in. So I want to start with some historical perspective. I think history is key. You go back 100 years, say 1922, the combined market cap of the pharma sector was less than $500 million in today's dollars. There was no penicillin. Insulin had just been discovered as a miracle cure for type 1 diabetes found in 1922. Insulin was made by grinding up pig pancreases. We had no clue about how genetics worked. The leading cause of death was infectious disease, especially flu, pneumonia, and tuberculosis. I mean, imagine that. The leading treatment for mental disorders was lobotomy. Life expectancy of birth in the United States was 54 years. In China, it was 35 years. And consumers spent less than 5% of their income on healthcare and virtually nothing on pharma. Merck and Wyeth were small chemical companies in New Jersey. Pfizer was doing great in confectionery, and J&J was a market leader in Band-Aids. Lilly was making pharmaceutical products, mainly from natural substances, and they closed their labs for the winter. So we've come a long way in 100 years. Today, the global pharmaceutical market has sales of $1.2 trillion. The value of the pharma sector is over $6 trillion, up over 1,000-fold from the 1920s. Not only do we understand genetics, but we can actually manipulate genes, kind of scary. There were 1.3 million articles on science and medicine that were entered into Medline in 2021, which is up 4-fold since 1996. The number of articles is doubling every 6.5 years. Mortality is down dramatically. Life expectancy of birth in the United States is 79 years, which, by the way, is lagging. We're not doing that well. In China, a country with much lower GDP per capita, life expectancy of birth today is 77 years. If you're a Hong Kong female, it's 88 years. And if you're lucky enough to be born as a Japanese female, it's 91 years. Most drugs have known efficacy and safety. And today, consumers spend nearly 1/5 of their income in the United States on healthcare and more than 3% of their income on pharmaceutical products. Our industry, the pharma industry, has been thoroughly globalized with modern drugs available in most countries of the world. Real pharma spend, so this is essentially consumer expenditures going back to 1929, has gone up over 1,000 times. And what really started to move pharmaceutical spend was the advent of employer-provided health insurance plans. So if you will, in the old days, we all had to buy our own drugs with whatever money we had. Today, your employer pays for it through an insurance plan, and that's been associated with a radical increase in spend. The fact that we have new drugs that are very effective for cancer, heart disease, and many other diseases has also helped. So what we did is we went back to 2003. This is actually when I was just getting started at Credit Suisse. Remember, I'm an economist and I'm a data pack rat. So I dug up this old data set. I still had it a couple years ago. And I wanted to ask myself, what is driving returns? In other words, who's actually generated shareholder value and who's destroyed shareholder value in the last 19 years? So what turned out was that of the 872 companies that we had in the data set from 2003 that I downloaded off of Bloomberg, only 116 had actually survived. So most of them had disappeared through bankruptcy or mergers. And what we found was, and I'm going to start at the bottom of this chart, was first of all, companies that were biotechs that had a powerful platform, that is a platform that led to multiple drug approvals, they on average gained 23.9% a year. That's an awesome return to do that over 19 years. A biotech that got a drug approved that solved a disease. So if you cured some disease, that was associated with a 21% return. If you were lucky enough to be a Chinese pharmaceutical company, you got a 16% return. And then everyone else basically has underperformed the market index pretty significantly. Big Pharma has not done well at all. In Japan, they have mandatory annual price cuts, devastating to their industry. I thought this was interesting. If you were a biotech and you got your product approved, but it helped the disease and didn't cure it, you only got a 4.4% return. The next slide here. So this shows the top 10 surviving companies by their annual return. The top two companies are Pinsing Huang Pharma and Hengrui Medicine, both of them very fine Chinese pharmaceutical companies. So the 5 red ones are Chinese. The 3 green ones are biotech companies with powerful platforms. And the 2 blue ones, Alexion and Vertex, both essentially cured a disease. Interestingly, Vertex cured a disease twice. And were able to get a 27% return for their shareholders. If you could put money into a mutual fund that gave you a 27% return for 20 years, you'd be a very rich person. So these are exceptionally good returns. So I wanted to focus in on one of the more productive platform companies, Regeneron, just to give you a flavor of how the pharma industry has been successful so far. Remember, we're going to start with the past. So essentially, Regeneron had a very innovative duo. Lynn Schleifer and George Yancopoulos founded the company in the early 2000s. And what they were doing back then was incredibly innovative. Today, it would be sort of humdrum. So they were the first in a pharma setting to essentially knock out genes in a mouse to see what that would do to the mouse phenotypically. And they were able to discover a number of interesting targets. By 2014, they decided it'd be a lot better to look at genetics in humans. And so they started acquiring massive amounts of genetic data. In 2014, it wasn't such an obvious idea. Today, everyone is doing it. They also built a great platform called Velocimune that allowed them to make fully humanized antibodies, and they were off to the races. These guys have created an enormous amount of value and gotten over 5 drugs approved. Again, if you go back and look at the data, Regeneron has generated a 25% return. So phenomenal. So the question is, what's going to happen going forward? So I do think that those productive platform companies that cure diseases, and by the way, Chinese plays, they're still going to be really important. But I believe that other things are going to matter in the next 2 decades. And that's really the question that I want to ask all of you. And I'm going to give you my opinion. And just bear in mind, it's Tim's opinion. I heard McKinsey today give their opinion, which was completely different. So anyway, I'm going to walk you through how I'm thinking about it, and I hope to stimulate some conversation. Before I go any further, any questions or comments, Martin, that have popped up in the chat window that I should address?
Let me check with Yaakov. Not yet.
All right, put them in and we'll hit them. All right, so I want to start by talking about the tech sector. In fact, this meeting we're having today in many ways is motivated by what's going on in tech and, health tech in this whole space. So what's shown on the lower left is the enterprise value in kind of a bar chart of the top 5 healthcare companies in the world as of yesterday. They are United Healthcare, J&J, Lilly, AbbVie, and Roche. What's shown on the right is the same for the top 5 tech companies. And what you'll note is that the tech sector, in value at least, as of yesterday, I know it dropped today, dwarfs the healthcare sector. The top 5 tech companies are worth $7.5 trillion. The top 5 healthcare companies are worth $1.9 trillion. Apple's enterprise value is larger than the top 5 healthcare companies combined. I mean, that's an amazing fact. And the reason it's amazing is that tech accounts for 6% of GDP and healthcare accounts for 19% of GDP. So what is it about these healthcare companies that is preventing them from creating value like a tech company? Well, part of the answer is on the far right. What this chart shows is the product revenue versus of 2 leading tech products versus the top 5 drugs of all time. So Comirnaty was Pfizer's COVID vaccine, did $36 billion last year. Paxlovid this year is going to do $25 billion. Humira in 21 did $21 billion. Keytruda, that's Merck's cancer drug, did $17 billion. And Lipitor was, historically the all-time champ at $13 billion. Those are impressive numbers till you look at iPhone, $196 billion in sales last year, or better yet, Google Ads, $209 billion. So what is it that these tech companies are doing? What's unique about their business model that is eluding pharmaceutical and healthcare companies? One last little note. If I had done the chart on the lower left of the healthcare companies 2 years ago, it would have been all pharma companies. Today, a vertically integrated payer, United Healthcare, is the #1 healthcare company in the world. I think it tells you volumes about what's going on in healthcare. So I'm going to start by making the obvious comment that pharma companies, frankly, have fewer barriers to competition. Pharma companies face constant branded competition and they have 20-year patent lives. So pharma products are essentially protected by patents. The problem with those patents is you have to spend a fortune to get one and get the damn drug approved. So it's very risky, time-consuming, and expensive. Consider this. Less than 3% of preclinical drugs are ever approved. After approval, less than 5% of drugs ever achieve $1 billion in sales. The average returns on pharma R&D investment, according to 2 studies, have been 0. In contrast, the top 5 tech companies exploit a variety of mechanisms to provide powerful protective moats for the businesses. I love the quote from Warren Buffett. A good business is like a strong castle with a deep moat around it. I want sharks in the moat. I want it untouchable. Let's just say there aren't a lot of sharks in that pharma moat. So how do tech companies build moats? I'm not going to bore you with the lecture on tech economics, but just to say network effects are incredibly valuable. If one person uses the phone, it's useless. If 10 people have phones, it's a lot more useful. If 10 billion people have phones, it's incredibly useful. That's a network effect. The second thing to note are data moats. I don't know. It's just crazy. I wake up in the morning and my wife, before she even rolls over and kisses me, she's like looking at her iPhone and checking out what happened to her family on Facebook. They know more about her than I know about her. The amount of data that tech companies have on human beings is stunning and makes it very difficult to compete because of the lock-in associated with gigantic data moats. Another obvious point is that we deal directly with those large tech companies. I have an account with Amazon. I have an account with Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, and Google. I use them all. I don't have an account with Pfizer. I don't have an account with J&J. I can't call J&J up and even complain about a product. In general, pharmaceutical companies deal with us, the consumer, indirectly. They deal with us through the doctor, or more frequently, the real customer is actually the person paying for it, the payer. The problem is that that indirect sales model gives the pharma company very little leverage in setting their price. I like to liken this to the market for dog food. So Dogs don't buy dog food. You see ads on TV constantly aimed at humans for dog food. It's kind of crazy, right? Dogs have no voice in the matter, or you might say bark in the matter. Basically, if you're making dog food, you have to make it sound like it's good to a human, right? It doesn't necessarily need to taste good to the dog or not. Well, my point is that medicines are like dog food. The doctor picks what medicines you get. That's a very weird business. And later you're going to hear from Basque Health. And one of the things we're trying to do with Basque Health is to disintermediate the role of physicians by letting consumers actually pick the drug that they want. So I now want to pause and ask all of you a thought experiment. Let's say you just heard, Tim's lecture and you went off and thought about the world for an hour. And now you had a blank sheet of paper and someone said, design $1 trillion healthcare company. So first of all, you're going to need to find some type of technology that's going to change healthcare, right? You got to have an angle. You're going to need a giant market that can get to over 60 billion in EBITDA. Today, Apple, Microsoft, and J&J trade for roughly 17 times EBITDA. So that would get you to roughly $1 trillion. You need some kind of defensible moat, some good alligators. And I would say that you need to avoid the patent system. If you're depending principally on the patent system to exclude competition, you're just screwed because you're just not getting enough protection. So that's the thought experiment. Any questions so far or comments?
Tim, let me just chime in. First of all, absolutely fascinating overview. As I said to everybody before, Tim is a big thinker. His background is an intersection of many important relevant items, not just for academics or investors, but for real life problems that real people have. And that's what we're going to be talking about today with our panelists. It's a perfect segue because the intersection of science, technology, and innovation includes big tech. And Tim has really put his finger on the pulse of one of the important issues that's driving a new secular, multi-decade long growth cycle. And that growth cycle means that all of the major tech companies have recognized that their core competencies intersect with the incredible new discoveries in science, healthcare, innovation, and medicine. And they have partitioned the healthcare world, which is now worth $14 trillion globally and $4 trillion in the US, to target early stage companies, grow them, scale them, and make them important to your lives. And that's what our panelists are going to be talking about. So Tim, I can't thank you enough for that perfect segue. It's really, I think, a testament to your vision. We will speak to Eli and Zach, who are here in the audience, who are running Basque. Their job, as they see it, is very simple. They are going to take over and replace Amazon as the major e-pharmacy platform, creating essentially a Shopify for e-pharmacies. And they figured out the secret sauce on how to distribute drugs across 50 states in a seamless way. So first of all, I really want to thank Tim for a tremendous presentation. I want to thank the audience. Are there any particular questions that the audience has for Tim at this particular time?
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Hazelton.
How's he going to do that? How does he answer that question? I'd like him to answer the question he answers. Right there, answer the question.
Answer the question of how $1 trillion healthcare company is going to. Well, part of the answer is going to be in. Okay.
David, if you don't mind,
Tim,
if you give me 5 minutes, I'll walk you through my thought process.
Perfect.
So there are 4 areas where I think outside of pharma, there are huge business opportunities that could lead to $1 trillion businesses. And then there's one way to do it within pharma. So the first area that I really like is bioelectronics. So basically our bodies are largely saltwater connected by the central nervous system. It turns out, no thanks to the pharma companies, that you can essentially read and write that central nervous system in the same way that you can read and write really anything on a computer. And so one company that I really like is called BIOS Health. They're digitizing the human central nervous system signals and turning that into a language that you can essentially write back to. Maybe BIOS Health succeeds, maybe they don't. I can't speak for them. But that idea that essentially our bodies can be controlled externally is a powerful one. And today, probably, there's no bigger leader than Elon Musk and his company Neuralink that's working on that idea. I see a relatively straightforward route to $1 trillion business there. The second idea is pan-health screening. There's a company called Grail that will today screen for whether or not you've got cancer. In the future, due to breakthroughs coming mainly through Amgen in the study of proteomics and metabolomics, it is possible to detect most asymptomatic diseases from a single blood draw. A company that we like is called Health Outlook in that area. There's just a huge market. A third area that I've already hinted at is sort of what Basque is doing, which is really leveraging the explosion of interest in telehealth and concierge medicine into an integrated online offering of pharmaceuticals, care, and community. The company that is by far doing the best job so far in this area, interestingly, is Amazon. And Amazon recognizes that there's huge opportunity to take frictions out of healthcare offerings. Fourth area is crop sciences. So I believe the biggest application of gene editing isn't going to be in humans, it's going to be in crops. It's so much easier. One of the problems in crops right now is we have GMO traits where you're adding artificial external genetic material. A company I really like is called Cebus. They're able to use the genetic material that plants already have with simple edits to essentially cause crops to be more climate friendly, more productive, and use a ton less fertilizer, which is very good for the overall ecosystem. So anyway, those are 4 examples of potential $1 trillion businesses that are to come. And I'll make sure that we distribute these slides around so you have a chance to kind of read through some of the details and think about these ideas. And frankly, feel free to debate me on them. I don't mind at all. This is just my thinking at this point. So I'll stop there, David, and turn it over to you.
Tim, once again, thank you. A really fantastic overview. A real roadmap of what we can see coming down the road for the next 10 plus years. And as you said, there's no reason why we can't see $1 trillion healthcare company. More importantly, we will see $1 trillion healthcare company.
David,
as many of these things.
We're going to see $1 trillion healthcare company, and it's going to come from either a tech company or someone in the audience today. It ain't going to come out of a big pharma based on the folks that I'm talking to. That is a provocative statement, and I think it's the truth.
I completely agree. And one of the things that's bringing Endeavor Funds and Capgemini together is this notion that we can really make a difference, that we care about early stage healthcare companies. We see the impact that they can have on people's lives. We understand the important role that strategic partners are going to play, like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Intel, NVIDIA. We really understand exactly where you're going with all this. And I think here at Capgemini, they're looking to create solutions. And in Endeavor Funds, we're looking to make investments. Really, a very clear mission that's aligned. We want a better, healthier world. Tim, thank you very much for everything that you've said. At this point, what I would like to do is I would like to introduce Sebastian, who is a key leader here at Capgemini. He will tell you a bit about himself and some of the vision that he has.
Awesome. Ooh,
Martin,
sorry.
You need to take me off the screen. There we go.
You're off.
Should we get a round of applause for Tim?
Please.
Awesome. This is a pretty loud mic, so I'm going to keep it very far from my mouth. Anyway, so hi everyone. My name is Sebastian Juvenal. I'm an executive strategy director here at Frog, which is our strategy, innovation, and design consulting arm at Capgemini. I'm also the head of the Applied Innovation Exchange at Capgemini. And so the mission of the Applied Innovation Exchange is to engage with our local community and ecosystem on complex challenges with an eye to solving them through strategic and innovative thinking, technology, and of course, collaboration with the ecosystem. So we look to collaborate with startups, VCs, accelerators, large tech partners, and of course, our clients. Our event today fits this mandate 100%. Well, as we're looking to explore, the changing healthcare landscape. Our ambition with this event is to learn, to discuss, to provoke new ways of thinking, and perhaps, just perhaps, find opportunities to collaborate. And of course, our ultimate goal here is to help make a positive impact on our world. We see a vision where there's a healthier world thanks to technology, and specifically thanks to harnessing the power of emerging technologies. And I know everyone in this room shares this vision and ambition, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. And therefore, I'm excited to get this started. But before I get started, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Dr. Gershon here, who's a leading healthcare innovation strategist and an advisor for Fortune 500 companies and startups alike. He's a big thinker who plays a long game, a visionary venture capital investor in groundbreaking, disruptive healthcare companies. Heck, he invested in Moderna before it was cool. And so he will be our moderator for the evening and introduce our panelists who he handpicked for tonight's event. And a last word before I give the mic over to him and get started. Dr. Gershon, Endeavor Life Science Funds, and Capgemini's Applied Innovation Exchange are committed to working together so that we can help solve problems encountered by startups as they look to harness the technology and look to grow and scale to create a healthier world for everyone. So to this end, stay tuned for some exciting workshops and events that will highlight the incredible opportunities that lay at the intersection of strategy, innovation, technology, science, and medicine. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much. I am not mic'd. Can you hear me? Now can you hear me? Okay. I am very pleased to be here today. It is a great pleasure to be able to partner with Capgemini. We share a common vision. We see the world as a healthier place at the intersection between science, technology, innovation, and medicine. We understand that there are things that have happened over the past several years that you will hear from panelists who have been engaged in improving the healthcare system. And this panel will talk to you about magic. And magic is taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary. They will tell you, for example, that you will wake up in the morning, you will have your cup of coffee, you will start your normal day, you will pull out your iPhone. You will look and you will see your heart is doing well, your lungs are doing well, your kidneys are doing well. But at 3:33 in the morning, artificial intelligence and machine learning kicked in, and your doctor has recommended a change in your insulin dose. And at your front door, before you even read the paper, you will have your medication. This panel is about amazing things that have happened. It's about amazing things that are happening that are going to impact your lives, real problem, real people. And it is my great pleasure to moderate this evening for Capgemini, for Endeavor Funds, and to present to you real visionaries. So let us set up a few chairs here and we will plug right into the panel discussion.
Hi, how
So
are you?
wonderful to
Nice
meet
to
you.
see you. pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me. Are we ready, or do we want to?
Yes. So you'll sit right here.
Hi, how are you? Pleasure.
First, let me introduce you to this incredible panel. Dr. Sasan is a founder and a leading physician at a company called Kindbody, which has recognized that it's very important to address women's healthcare issues from a women's perspective and to close a gap in access that women have had in healthcare. Second, Dr. Hazelton, who is a real visionary, who is the leader and pioneer in understanding that we can map the human genome, an acclaimed professor at Harvard, an author of many books, involved in both national and international healthcare issues. Mike Raffeo, a Harvard Business School graduate, who's taken his understanding of business and driven it into a very important part of healthcare, which is going to have huge social impact. And that is creating new drugs faster and cheaper. And he will talk to you about his company, Fluidigm, which is using 3D printing technology to print human tissue for drug testing. And finally, Bunny Ellerin, who really started the entire Harvard Business School healthcare focus several years ago with a clear vision of how important healthcare is going to be to everyone. And the intersection of business, science, and medicine really rests with Bunny in terms of her bringing Harvard into this game. So first of all, a big round of applause for everybody here. And now, let's jump right into the questions. So first of all, Dr. Sasan, you saw something just a few years ago. It was a vision. You're a committed physician. In fact, this evening, Dr. Sasan had an emergency. We had to shift things around because we really wanted to hear from Dr. Sasan this evening. Her dedication to being a physician is paramount, even though this is an important conference. But she kindly made it here. And I want to understand, several years ago, you saw a problem with women's healthcare. Tell us what that problem looked like, and tell us who you brought in as key stakeholders to be able to solve the problem.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here with all of you and in such distinguished company. This is a very loud mic. I am a board certified OBGYN. I'm the founding physician and chief innovation officer of Kindbody. Kindbody, for those of you who don't know, is actually right across the street. So even though I had my emergency, I was able to come over. Kindbody is a national fertility company. But uniquely, and we own and operate 30 clinics across the country, all independently owned and operated. But uniquely, we're a fertility company that contracts directly with employers to add fertility benefits. So our clinics are open to the public. You could walk right in. We accept major medical insurance. But the key differentiator of our company is that we get contract directly with companies like Walmart, who just added for the first time fertility benefits for their 1.7 million associates exclusively through Kindbody. So we are now Walmart's exclusive fertility center of excellence. So any associate that needs fertility treatment that works at Walmart has a lifetime maximum subsidy, but that can be offered exclusively through us. And I trained at Mount Sinai here in New York, was part of academia for 12 years. And the problem that exists with fertility care historically was it was available for the top 1%. and it was a cash self-pay industry. And if you could afford it, great. And if you couldn't, tough luck. And the industry doesn't care whether or not you can afford it, because the fertility doctors of the world are doing just fine with that top 1%. But the reality of it is people across the country are waiting longer to have children. And as they wait longer to have children, more and more people are having fertility issues. And then if you add to it the LGBTQ plus community that needs fertility care in order to have children, and you realize that now there's been a shift where companies just offering major medical, vision, and dental insurance is no longer considered enough, that if you want to attract and retain good talent, you actually have to have really significant benefits that go beyond kind of that standard 3. So fertility benefits are now one of the most highly added benefits today. So our company was founded August 1st, 2018. So we're only 4 years old. We did achieve unicorn status this year. We're now valued at $1.8 billion. We've raised over $200 million. And so it's a lot of fun.
So one of the core theses here about bringing these incredible visionaries together in an innovation hub like Capgemini is the notion that Tim was talking about, that big tech and healthcare are intersecting in a very meaningful way. The audience here is comprised of people in technology and healthcare, faculty members from prominent universities, business leaders, thought leaders, and visionaries who don't just think about things in a silo. They think about strategic partnerships. And one of the key strategic partnerships for Kindbody is Google Ventures. And so this is a hard data point to look at as a harbinger of things to come, as a way to look to see where money is being spent. And I can tell you right now that as money is being sucked out of the capital markets, 10 times the amount of money is being thrown into healthcare by Apple, Google, Microsoft, Intel, NVIDIA, and all of these players alongside Amazon have divided up the healthcare sector into 4 areas. Yaakov, if you can flip on the next slide, I'd appreciate that. Now, the next one. That one. So these are the 4 areas, and we're going to delve into this a little bit deeper, because the meaning of this conference is not about investment. The meaning of this conference is opportunity to live a healthier life. Money is a facilitator, but ideas and passion and vision that Kindbody and Dr. Sasan have shown us are really the engine. And so the capital that's going in is driving that engine. And as people in tech and in healthcare and in business, I want you to understand all this because it's exciting for me. It's going to make a difference in everyone's life. Now, I'd like to ask Bill, who has seen healthcare from so many different perspectives, as a scientist, as a faculty member, as an author, as a builder of companies. Where do you see technology shifting some of the resources? And in particular, I want to focus in on technology in the hospital, where I know you have a very strong opinion and a very strong understanding, and how that shift is now moving opportunity from hospital-based to home-based care.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Martin, for the opportunity. You for the audience. This is the first time I've spoken in public for about 3 years for understandable reasons, so I'm especially happy to be here. There's a particular resonance with what you just heard. My sister was the head of Child Health and Human Development. She's OBGYN, PhD, and MD. And she's been very involved in women's health, as you may know. She started the Society for Research in Women's Health that now has about 10,000 members. Not only that, she lobbied very hard to get women included in clinical trials, which is also really important. So I'm sure, and by the way, at age 76, she was given a tenured position in Texas. So there's hope for all of us who have gray hair. So it's really nice to be in your company and to see how you've taken that. There's a leitmotif that's gone through these two talks, the ones you've just heard, and that is inclusion. Inclusion is one of the reasons Google is worth what it's worth. Inclusion means including everybody. The motto of my foundation, Access Health International, is everybody, no matter where they live in the world, deserves access to high quality care. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what sex you are, doesn't matter your political beliefs, you deserve it. And one way to get that in healthcare is inclusion. One country that's an OECD country that is not inclusive is the United States. We are about the bottom of the inclusion scale. Sure, we have fantastic doctors, we have you, but our statistics are terrible. We are like the Dominican Republic in almost every healthcare outcome, and that's not good. 2 standard deviations behind OECD countries. You need technology to give you inclusion. Now, we advise governments, my foundation, all over the world, even in China and even today in China with all the problems that they exist. We have been instrumental in advising India as to how to improve their healthcare access and performance and quality. I wish we had the same kinds of ears in the United States that we have in India and many of these other countries. You refer to the fact that people make plenty of money doing what they are doing now. Why should they do something different? I began Access by talking about people who do 50 eye operations a day. Everything they do is invented right here. Do they do it? No, they do 5 a week. Same with heart operations. So one of the things we need is scale, and one of the ways to get to scale is through technology. And I think that is a common theme that you heard from Tim. I was very excited to hear him talk. It's one of the things that you're doing, and it's one of the things that the internet and technology could do. There's something else. Everybody deserves access. That's the first one, access to affordable, certainly not true in the United States or for many people, as you've discussed, and there's structural ways. I've just written a book with my foundation on fintech for health. There's a whole nother technology that wasn't referred to, but financial technology for health is a really big deal to help people who can't normally afford healthcare services to do it. And we're working all over Southeast Asia, beginning to work in Africa and South America on use of fintech tools to provide access to the lower, say, 3/4 of the population. Very important to do that. And the next word we say is high quality. Quality is really important. You can get healthcare, but it may not be what you need. And that is, I'd say, unfortunately, very common. You don't get the kind of healthcare you need. All of us know that is true. And if you don't go to the right place at the right time with the right doctor, you're not going to get the care that you deserve. How do you focus on that? Well, that's again where technology can come in. I've written a book on how NYU Langone went from really the bottom of the pile in quality to year after year now the top in the country for academic medical centers. It's 1, 2, or 3 for the last 10 years. And they used to be at the bottom third. How did they do that? They did it through a unified information system that goes across the entire hospital and is totally without any interface between what people do, the money they spend, and the outcome they get, and what the patients think about what they've just experienced. That's what you need. That's the same kind of information system that's going to move healthcare and is moving healthcare from the hospital, the outpatient clinic, to the home. And there are a lot of companies who can enable that. But if you don't have the integrated healthcare information system, you're not going to be able to use that to your advantage. And that's the kind of systems that can be built. People are trying to build. That's what we advise people to build. It's very hard to do. And let me say, it may seem simple, but any of you who've tried to take an IT solution and integrate it with a healthcare system knows it is a bitch, to say the least. It is tough. And it's usually impossible, actually. So you've really got to pay a huge amount of attention to how those information systems work, how they take your technology and integrate it. And whoever figures out how to integrate these healthcare systems is also going to have a very successful company. So I want to thank you, Martin, for the opportunity. I want to thank you for listening. And there are a lot of great ideas that we've heard already today. I'm sure we'll hear a few more.
Fantastic, fantastic. I mean, Bill, such a comprehensive overview and real-life experience with NYU Langone. And now I can't think of a more perfect segue to Bunny, who has just produced an incredible document, which is an overview of early-stage companies in one of her organizations, really addressing some of these issues about access, front door access, using digital technology to open up opportunities for people who are not really being served in an equal way. And I think whether it's an international focus, whether it's an urban focus, the ability to access care is absolutely critical. It's a right. It has to be an equally driven right. And I think some of the things that I know Bunny is extremely passionate about, which is how digital technology can interface in solving some of these problems. I would love to hear from Bunny about some of the things that she sees in this incredible new world of digital healthcare.
Sure, thank you. Just understand, I run an organization called New York City Health Business Leaders. It's about 13 years old, and really we created it to create a community around healthcare innovation in New York. Today, New York is the digital health capital, and it's the capital of a lot of healthcare innovation. 13 years ago, not so much, and that's really why we started it. So what Martin's referring to, we publish reports on the healthcare innovation in New York. So we've been doing it for 5 years. A couple of things. Number one, technology is not going to solve healthcare's problems, okay? Technology is an enabler, and it's facilitating a lot of growth. But there's a lot in healthcare that technology is not going to solve. And so I would push back Dr. Hazeltine and say, really, the root of a lot of our problems in the United States is the way healthcare is financed and the way healthcare is paid for, right? And so technology is not going to solve that. However, barring that, technology can do a lot of good, right, on access. We've already talked about it. There are a lot of people who don't have access to healthcare because they don't have insurance, right? And they can't, if you don't have insurance, you can't afford to go to the doctor. Even if you do have insurance, there are a lot of people who have plenty of insurance and still can't afford really good care. So technology has helped increase access. COVID absolutely accelerated it beyond belief. Over the past 18 months, at this point, to almost 3 years, it really opened it up. It forced it, right? So what do we mean? You can see a doctor online now, right? You can see a doctor through your phone, through your computer, through many, many ways where you don't have to go to an office. And so that means that, you've got an opportunity to connect with a provider. Technology also has provided tools to help consumers make better decisions, like pharmaceuticals, right? Drug prices for many drugs are incredibly high. There's a company called GoodRx, and there are others where you, at the point of care, and that's when you need it, at the point, you can find out what a drug costs and maybe get coupons, because they're often hidden from real consumers. There are lots of things called rebates and whatnot. But companies like that are providing transparency for consumers, right, to access healthcare. And then there's just the wealth of information that's out there. So, actually, my son sent me a picture of something on his face, and he's like, "I've got cancer." I'm like, really? Why do you say that? I Googled it. I'm like, nah, that's stuff, right? There's a lot of misinformation, but there's also a lot of really good information on the internet. It's about figuring out how to act, where to find it. And there are a lot of really credible sources which have opened up lots of ways for individuals to take better care of themselves. So, those are some of the access points.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And that is actually a perfect segue to Mike, because when we talk about cost of healthcare, the cost of drugs clearly is a major factor in the overall healthcare economics. And Mike will tell you about his company, which is doing incredible things using very advanced 3D printing technology, which I've done a deep dive on this. It's currently more than $2.5 billion to bring a drug to market. It takes 12 and a half to 13 years. Mike and I have had this discussion. In the next several years, we can expect drugs to be produced in 6 years for a cost of about $700 million. While those numbers are still high, it's a sign of things to come. And part of what that means is that people like Mike, who have worked incredibly hard, who have vision, are now reaching out to key stakeholders. And I would love for Mike to talk about how the key stakeholders see this new world of drug discovery. This has a huge social impact, which is part of the message that everyone here is talking about. Improving healthcare from multiple points is essential, and Mike is doing that. So I'd love to hear about your stakeholders and how they view things.
Absolutely, and thank you for the chance to speak. It's an interesting opportunity to me to talk to you all tonight, because I get to talk to you about something that represents one of the very rare things that everybody can agree on, and the evidence of that is that the Senate just passed a bill unanimously supporting the fact that we need to improve the way that we test drugs in order to facilitate R&D productivity. We need to stop relying on certain outdated animal models. Now, if the Senate can pass anything unanimously today, it tells you that it's one of these universally agreeable things, right? We can't possibly have divisiveness. Why is that? Because everybody agrees drug prices are really high and they're growing faster than GDP by a lot. And what are we going to do about this? It's going to bankrupt us. Well, we have to ask the question, why is that? And we have to understand deeply that the reason why that is not as simple a soundbite as greedy drug company executives. I know a lot of drug company executives. I don't know a single greedy one. I know the vast majority of them have committed their entire lives and careers to trying to help patients. So how is it that we still end up in this place? Well, you have to think about the dynamics, right? In drug discovery, a lot of the easy to discover drugs have been discovered already. We're now trying to solve incredibly complex problems. And when we're trying to solve incredibly complex problems, we're trying to do that with inadequate tools. Everybody here has read a story on the front page of the Times or some other publication that said the latest such and such innovation cures cancer in a mouse. 99 times out of 100, that does not cure cancer in anything else other than a mouse. Why? Because it's really easy to cure cancer in a mouse, apparently. It's only half tongue-in-cheek. Curing cancer is incredibly difficult, any kind of it. And the same thing is true for the vast majority of the other diseases that we're trying to develop drugs for today. So if we're trying to solve an incredibly difficult problem, what are we doing about it from an innovation standpoint to try to get better at it? This idea that we call R&D productivity. How are we trying to get better? We're throwing more crap against the wall, faster, hoping we can find the stuff that sticks. In technical terms, that's called high throughput screening. But it's literally throwing more stuff against the wall, hoping we can find the stuff that sticks faster. We still rely on outdated in vitro models of isolated cells in a petri dish, hoping they're going to give us signal on what's going to happen in a human. We rely on hamsters and mice and dogs and monkeys and animals that are tested completely needlessly, but it's the only way that we can get some assurity that when we go into humans, it's going to be safe. And by the way, the very first day we put a drug in a human for the very first time in a phase 1 safety trial, we have no idea what's going to happen. We have a guess. We have a best guess, but we have no idea if that's going to be different in a white man versus a black woman. We have no idea if that's going to be different in a pediatric population versus a geriatric population. We have no clue. We have nothing that can give us a signal on that. And nobody knows how to solve this problem. That's the fundamental challenge that technology needs to be brought to bear. Why do we actually have no idea? Because biology is astronomically complex. There are tons and tons of things about biology that we have no idea about. Right? In your body today, you have cells everywhere. They're surrounded by the extracellular matrix. It's this glob of proteins. It's made up of thousands of proteins, most of which we don't know what they are or what they do. That's a fact. We cannot name all of the proteins that make up the extracellular matrix today. Never mind all the cells, which are actually the complicated parts. The proteins are somewhat easy. The cells are the complicated parts. They have thousands of receptors, well over half of which we have no idea what they do or why they do that. So biology is this massively complex problem. What should be ringing in our heads? Data. This is an incredible opportunity to develop the data sets and to apply the tools that we have in big tech, big data, ML, AI, in order to actually start learning in a more systematic way. But today that's been really hard. Why? Because the folks doing the work with gloves on wet, squishy stuff. And that doesn't feel an awful lot like an ML algorithm in the cloud. So how am I thinking about it? I heard Stefan Bancel from Moderna describe when he built a manufacturing facility and he put $150 million into building an all-digital manufacturing facility. He said, listen, mRNA is information. It's a code that we're giving the body to produce the right drug inside your own body. And so if we're an information and digital first company, why are we writing stuff down on paper and transcribing it into Microsoft Excel to keep track of a quality check? This makes no sense at all. We have to apply digital tools for complex solutions. The same thing's true in drug discovery, and that gets around to why am I talking to you here today? Because my company, Fluidform, is really focused on helping drug companies find better drugs. How do we do that? Well, we have a really cool way of 3D printing human tissue that lives and breathes in a dish, in a lab. What does that mean? Well, for us, it means that we can actually take drugs way before they're going to go into humans. I'm talking before they've ever gone into an animal. And we can get a sense of what's going to happen when you apply that drug into human tissue, not mouse tissue, not dog tissue, not monkey tissue. Not only can we get a sense of that, we can know that we have the right disease in there that we're trying to treat. We can do it in male heritage cells, female heritage cells of every race, color, platform on the planet. And we can get much better data years before it's going to go into humans. Why does it matter? Because today, 95% of the drugs that we try to advance into animals are going to fail. If we can reduce that rate a tiny fraction, we can start to make enormous impact to cost. And we think we can reduce that rate a heck of a lot more than that. I could talk to you all day about how we actually do the 3D printing. It's insanely cool. My co-founders out of Carnegie Mellon have developed the most advanced technology on the planet to actually build living human tissue in a dish. But I'll spare you the details because I'm an engineer and not everybody else in this room is, so you can't possibly be as interested in it as I am. But if you are, find me after.
Mike, thank you so much. That was amazing. Just to segue now into this, one of the core messages here is awareness. Awareness by what the opportunities are for real people who are here in the audience. Awareness by major companies who are looking at some of these 4 vertical areas, some of which we've mentioned today, to help, to assist, to grow, to scale, which is at the core of what Sebastian talked about what Capgemini is looking to do and what Endeavor funds are looking to do, to identify the opportunities to partner. And that partnership has real world implications. So Google Ventures now is 55% controlled by healthcare investors. Microsoft made its second biggest purchase in Nuance for $19.6 billion to capture the electronic healthcare records market. Amazon has purchased One Medical and PillPack to take over telemedicine and to take over e-pharmacy, which, by the way, Basque is going to do something about. And you will speak to Eli and Zach a little bit later about their ideas, what they can do. And then finally, Apple has made it very clear. Tim Cook has said, our greatest legacy will be healthcare. Morgan Stanley just did a report that said by 2027, home health care revenues for Apple alone will be $313 billion. So my question, which is an open question to this incredible panel, is how do we encourage, amplify, and build this incredible momentum by bringing these incredible technology companies to early stage companies? How do we help them? How do we provide the resources? One of the ways is through incredible efforts for individual cohorts of patients. One of them is through individual problems in healthcare like drug discovery. One of them is through access. But I would love to hear a general open question about where you see the intersection of big tech in the next 5-10 years.
I have a comment. We're trying in Access Health. We're dealing with a problem very similar to that. We were advisors to the Indian government when they wanted to improve access to the bulk of their population to healthcare. Their idea was to create 160,000 distributed clinics throughout the country. We organized a series of international symposia for them. And the most critical part of that, of course, is not only the funding and the access, what the actual structure will be, but how the information is shared. And that's one of the questions you've asked. And so we're now an advisor to that program for creating a transparent information system across all of India. That's about 1.4 billion people. Since you seem to like billions, maybe trillions, that's a lot of people. So how do we do that?
I won't deny that.
So what do we do to actually try to do that? Well, what we do is we train the providers to the system. So we help create the architecture for what that information system should look like, how it should function. But we know that it's not going to be one company that does it. There'll be many different providers. And so we're running training sessions for the last 2 years for a whole host of suppliers. And that is, we're a not-for-profit. I imagine if we turned into a for-profit, we could make some profit from that.
You know,
But that's one of the ways you do it, is you set the standards, you have the private sector come together to supply the components, and you make sure that they integrate it properly.
no, that's a fantastic answer. I think before I hear from Dr. Sasan, because I know that you want to say something, really, the purpose of money is to do good. It's not to make more money. You're an incredible scientist. You're an incredible physician. You're an incredible businessman. You're an incredible businesswoman. We know the value of money. But we also know that we have suffered for 3 years with COVID. I had the worst experience of my life. It took me 1 month to recover. It emphasizes the fact that we are all connected. It emphasizes the fact that we are all human. It emphasizes the fact that we recognize now, after this incredible pandemic, how critical healthcare is for all of us. And so the ability for money to come into this problem, to solve it, for me is welcomed. Whether it's billions or trillions, I look at it as a way to make people healthier. Dr. Sasan, you had something I know that was on your mind.
To Bonnie's point, I think one of the problems with the United States in healthcare is it's archaically behind when it comes to utilization of technology. I mean, think about all the things that everybody in this room could do on your phone. You could buy a car, you could do a second mortgage on your house, you could literally build engineer a human tissue but you still have to pick up the phone and call your doctor's office to make an appointment. Really? You still have to wait on hold for an hour to talk to your insurance company to figure out why they overcharged you. That if you want to talk to your doctor, you still have to call, you still have to be on hold. And a third, for example, in my world, a third of fertility companies in the United States still use paper charts.
It's amazing.
The Mount Sinai, which is, a premier academic institution, only switched over to electronic medical record in the last 6 years. Like, come on. And that's not unusual. And that's Manhattan. So imagine what's happening in Arkansas and everywhere in between. And so I think one of the biggest things is healthcare in this country really needs to get its act together and come on unified computer systems really that speak to each other, so that my mom doesn't have to remember her medications, that her medications follow her everywhere she goes. And there's so much technology out there that it's really sad that no one has really taken the initiative to bring it all together. And until that happens, we're still going to be on paper charts in reality, and we're still going to be on hold with our doctors. And the potential for the technology won't catch up, because that's where the research comes into play. That's where you can actually have better solutions, better clinical trials, when everybody's data talks to each other.
Fantastic. First of all, a big round of applause. Well, I think Bunny has a question. All right, a comment.
Just one last comment, because you asked how big tech could engage with startups, right?
Yes.
And so pretty much every one of the big tech companies has some sort of incubator in healthcare. I know that Amazon, one in particular, has one around healthcare innovation for Medicaid, for the Medicaid population, but they all have some sort of incubator of some sort. But what I'm seeing, so most of these companies have been very closed, right? Like, they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk on panels. They don't want to talk about what they're doing in healthcare. They've been very resistant. I've seen over the past year or so, they've been reaching out to me. They've been reaching out more. And I think what that means is they recognize healthcare is really hard. Okay? Like, it is so hard, particularly in a system like ours, which is really chaotic and paid for by multiple, like, government, private, individual. It's just, it's still a mess. And so I think what you're going to see is that more and more of the big companies are going to be reaching out, because they realize they don't know a lot of what they need to know in order to make a real difference. So I think we're on the way.
That's a fantastic point. Partnership with key stakeholders, communication like this, raising awareness, engaging in discussion, engaging in conversation, bringing the level of healthcare up to the highest level of importance. That's what tonight is about.
Can I build on that really quickly?
Yes, please, Mike.
So I've been in the life sciences for 25 years, and I've actually watched this cycle now happen twice. And so it's really interesting to me that in the late aughts, there was a period of time when the technology companies said, look at those dumb old medical device companies. All their technology looks like it did in the 90s. These guys are dinosaurs. The FDA is just slowing them down. We'll do better. We'll go eat their lunch. And the med device industry said, that's hilarious. You guys don't know what you're doing. You will never be successful. We're going to ignore you. And unfortunately, both of those viewpoints were reinforced when nothing came out of it, because both of those were the wrong mindset, right? The med device folks who said, you guys don't understand FDA, therefore you'll never be successful, missed out on a tremendous opportunity to engage and say, what do you understand that we can learn from? And the tech community missed out on an understanding of what does it take to be successful, to really work with the industry to drive successful products. That's why I'm so encouraged by the kinds of initiatives that Bunny's talking about, where we're actually now at this sort of second nexus of tech and healthcare and life sciences, where there's this opportunity for the right mindset to come, a digital first mindset, a data-driven mindset, a mindset that says we can take all the great things out of tech and apply the things that matter in the life sciences. And if we think about it, doing it in concert, we can do it so much better than trying to do it in silos. I was really encouraged, again, the talk with Stefan a week ago, where he talked about hiring a chief digital and process excellence officer, a chief digital officer at a therapeutics company. And that person's job was to make sure that nobody ever wrote anything down on paper again, first and foremost. right? And so you can imagine that's a drug company that does not have 100 years of legacy like we saw on the chart earlier tonight. So they're able to make that kind of shift. Think about what that would take at Roche, right? So it starts with a mindset, a belief about the value of this intersection, and then grows. And I think that's so important for everybody in this room, because everybody in this room who's touched this in any way, shape, or form has something to contribute, has a valuable perspective there.
That's fantastic. First of all, I want to thank the panelists for just an incredible contribution. And I want to open it up to this audience because I see in your eyes all kinds of questions, all kinds of opportunities to ask the panel something more. Do I have different questions? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Gershon.
Can you stand up?
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Gershon, and thank you for this incredible panel, for a great event. You've told us about amazing technologies that will be changing our lives and making us healthier. What do you see as the next step in the evolution of these technologies? And for us as a consumer, what application and use cases will these new technologies offer us?
Fantastic question, because it really is at the intersection of not just technology for technology's sake, but for technology to do something to change our lives. Let me chime in for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up to the panel here. For me, there's two important areas to talk about. The first area is quantum computing. It's not something that's on the tip of everyone's tongue, but it has the capability of increasing the speed of big data, which Mike has talked about and other people have talked about, by 151 million times faster than any of the supercomputers that we currently have. What does that mean? It means instantaneous understanding of diagnosis, of treatment algorithms, of communication, an understanding of how we can target drugs quicker, get them to market quicker. And then the second area, which I'm extremely excited about, is regenerative medicine. Again, not on the tip of everyone's tongue, but companies like CollPlant have now created a 3D printing model where they can implant a biomaterial into a breast cancer survivor who has a mastectomy, trigger internal tissue growth naturally so that breast tissue regenerates, all at the same time as the material that's been implanted disintegrates. There will be no longer artificial implantations. Another company, CellLink, has an incredible new technology for bone fractures and for spinal cord injuries. Again, material that's going to be implanted into your body that will biodegrade over time, but that will augment and amplify the ability for bone to grow exponentially, and in some cases lay down neural networks that will allow spinal cord injury victims to recover lost function. So science fiction is now becoming reality. The big tech companies realize this. Investments in this type of technology has meaningful impact for everybody. I'd love to hear from the panel about your individual perspectives on these two issues, the new technologies, and what are some of the use cases? Need the microphone. And I know how to flip it on. Sometimes.
I'll be quick because I'm sure I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
It's a great question, by the way.
For the field of reproductive medicine and IVF is still relatively new when you compare it to other aspects of medicine. So one of the biggest avenues right now is really on a cellular level and utilizing artificial intelligence in identifying the best egg and identifying embryos and doing further genetic testing that would allow you to eliminate diseases that are genetically inherited. So like right now, we're really good at identifying BRCA mutations and then biopsying embryos so that you can eliminate passing on a BRCA mutation to future generations. That's pretty easy. We've figured that out. but there's so many other diseases that obviously still need that process, but also taking away some of the functionality that requires a human to look under a microscope and make a decision, because human, a subjective look at saying, oh, this looks like a good egg or this looks like a good embryo, and really taking that away and using artificial intelligence so that the microscope can tell you which one is the good egg and which ones are the good embryos, which would then improve efficiencies in the lab, which then allow you to lower cost, which then helps you improve access and perfect a science that is still relatively new. So that's what's happening in my world.
Let's just pass it on the line. I think you've identified and given a very specific answer to the question. The way I look at it is a good business allows us to do what we want more simply. Mm-hmm. So that's what this will do in health. That's what AI is going to do for health. Everything that you'd like to do becomes simpler. It's like when I want to buy something, I go to Amazon first because I know all I have to do is push a few buttons. It's going to show up at my door in a day or two. I like that. And it makes my life a lot simpler. And that's the kind of thing you want in medicine. You want to make an appointment. You want to understand what disease you have. You want to make sure you don't have to go any distance to get your treatment. You want to have it at home. All those things are things we want, and that's what AI can do for us. Whether it is a scientist in a laboratory who wants to understand something more quickly, to get information more quickly, whatever it is that we humans want to do, AI can make it simpler. And I think that's the fundamental message and if it's done properly, and I think the point you made very early on, Bunny made, is that our healthcare system is really messed up, largely because of the way we pay for things. And until we get that sorted out, it's going to stay messed up. And so AI can only do so much in a really messed up system. That's why we do fintech for health, because we're trying to put a patch onto a really lousy system. And so we've got to, at some point, catch up with our European neighbors and the rest of the world and get a much better way to pay for healthcare. That's why your business works, because you have a lousy way to take care of fertility issues. Yeah. And if it worked really well, you wouldn't have your business. But since it works so poorly, you have a great business.
It's a great example. I think when we talk about what's in it for us now or soon, we have to take a quick snapshot back and say, where were we just a couple of years ago? 3 of the 4 panelists are wearing a wearable on their wrist. And my wearable on my wrist, I can take an ECG, 3.3 lead ECG anytime I want. Sounds like a novelty until I tell you that I've dealt with sharp chest pains for 14 years that are undiagnosed. There's no understandable cause. So what does a 3-lead ECG on my wrist mean? It keeps me out of the emergency room. Every time I feel that pain, I can check to see, is this something that needs some further intervention or not? I can monitor heart rate variability, which is an emerging science that people are starting to understand really well right now, to understand what your autonomic nervous system is doing and what the level of stress and cumulative stress, physical, psychological, is actually doing to you and what that means as far as what you ought to take on a given day. And I could do those today. I do that every single day. So I'm able to self-monitor and do things that used to require experts lying in bed in the morning before I put my feet on the ground. And that has changed dramatically in low single-digit years. The pace of technology is only speeding up. So if that's happened in the last few years, imagine what the next few years are going to be like. Right? It's not that far off the scenario that Dr. Gershon described, where you're going to get that report in the morning as you're eating your breakfast cereal or your ketogenic eggs, and you're going to find out, yeah, this is what's going on and this is what we need to do about it. The thing that I'm most excited about in the near term with technology is that disintermediation, or that democratizing access to diagnostic information and what to do about it, because that's coming fast. It's a tidal wave and it's only going to speed up. And as that's happening, that's much better for all of us. So.
Fantastic.
I don't have a lot to add. I think all of that's great. But for the vast majority of us, right, like most people, some of the best stuff is really the blocking and tackling and simple stuff. Just the fact, even though EMRs, EHRs really are built on pretty crappy technology, and it's so not intuitive to use them. If that changes in the next 5 years, if that happens, like that'll be a huge, huge win for all of us. But let's just think, 10 years ago, you couldn't log, like, you know, I'm an NYU patient and also Cornell. 5 years ago, I couldn't log on and see my records at all, right? Let alone they're both on Epic. So now I can see both of them at the same time. It sounds so ridiculous because we do so much else online, but the fact that we have that today is great, and it empowers us and enables us to do a lot. So I think like the AI stuff is cool and great, but for the vast majority of us, just like basic tech coming into healthcare and advancing things is going to make a huge difference in the next 5 years.
I would love to open this to many more questions, but it's 8 o'clock in the evening, and I know that people want to go home to have a bite, to be with their families. So what I would suggest, if it's okay with the audience, because I see lots of hands, and I would love to have you ask those questions, if we can perhaps move this into the next room, have some wine, have some snacks. We've got tons of food. We have amazing panelists here who I really like to give an incredible round of applause to. Thank you so much. We really want to get to know more about what you're doing. Bill, it's such an honor.
Competition in the healthcare. It's no competition in the healthcare. This is a problem for the country. No competition, prices goes up, quality goes down. And this is the biggest problem. We're discussing many different things, but until we will fix this problem, it won't go anywhere. Because competition...
Great question. There's California Red sitting in there. Let's enjoy.
Before we break.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
We're good on that?
No, I'm just gonna introduce them right now.
Okay, 1 second. You're gonna give us 1 minute. You're gonna introduce them. Okay.
So I just want to thank these amazing people, Bunny. Thank you so much.
Another round of
Thank you
applause,
so
please.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
As Ben was saying, we have heard from real visionaries who are doing real things. A unicorn in the past 5 years, a visionary who's looked at genetics from the beginning to now, a person who's cutting edge technology, and a woman who's started multiple businesses who are really driving incredible things in digital healthcare. But now, what is the future? The future are young entrepreneurs. And I happen to have two sitting right over here in Eli and Zach Dorff. These two guys who work with Tim Oppler are early visionaries. They will be where you are in a few years. Yes, you are. They believe that there are models out there that can be put to incredible use in healthcare, and they will tell you about it. Do not mob them when they're drinking wine, but do speak to them about their vision of creating a Shopify for e-pharmacy, a platform that democratizes pharmaceutical distribution. And one of the key things that we talked about today was democratizing healthcare, access to healthcare, equality in healthcare for different groups. So Eli, Zach, you have an incredibly captive audience. I see it in their eyes. They want to buy you some wine. So let's everybody move next door. This time I also really want to reiterate my thanks to Capgemini. Their focus on innovation, their incredible participation in this process. I want to thank the sponsors, Teray, a partner in particular, who is really a lead. And in the back of the room, a silent gentleman who is, in his own right, an incredible scientist, an incredible person, who is from McGill. Please stand up, Jake. Jake is leading an innovation revolution in Montreal at McGill. There is a commitment now on the part of the Canadian government that recognizes that many of the things that are happening in the United States belong in Canada as well. There is support financially, politically, academically, and with my help, corporate sponsorships and stakeholders will recognize the incredible opportunities that are at McGill. So I really want to encourage everyone to speak to Jake. He's a quiet powerhouse in the back row, and he has a lot of things to tell you about what McGill is doing. I also really want to thank Ben Way for the incredible opportunity that Harvard Alumni in Tech has offered this platform. It's been inspiring to work with you. Plus, I like your ascot very much. I'm going to have to get one for myself. And I hope that the rest of the evening is filled with networking, fun, and a little bit of California wine.
Yes. Let's give a hand of applause for Dr. Gershon here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I had no idea he was such a public speaker. You know, in first meeting, he's a very humble man, and you know what a stage presence. So thank you for moderating, everybody. Thank you for your attention tonight, for showing up. You know, I know these days, you know, getting to an event, you know, can be a hurdle. And so showing up and giving us your time and attention is wonderful. If you enjoy this event, come talk to us. You know, Harvard in Tech is always looking for more volunteers. We want to hear what you like to learn about, you know, any of these topics in the back or other things on healthcare. Or if you have other ideas and want to volunteer and put together wonderful events like that, please come talk to me. And, you know, we'll have a drink in the back. And thank you to our wonderful volunteers. So volunteers,
Yes.
please raise your hand. Thank you.